Hi, friends. Welcome back to the Life with Leverly podcast. I'm so excited for today's episode because I'm sitting down with my only sibling, my brother, Jarryd Wallace. Jarryd's story is nothing short of remarkable. He is truly one of my biggest inspirations in life. When Jarryd was only 17 years old, he had a complication during a pretty routine surgery that ultimately led to the decision to amputate his leg a couple years later. With the sport of running being Jarryd's main sense of identity at the time, Jarryd had a long road of not only physical healing, but emotional healing as well. In this episode, you'll hear Jarryd's inspirational story of how he shifted where he placed his sense of self-worth, the importance of defining your why versus your what, and how he didn't let his physical limitations stop him from chasing his dreams. Jarryd has since gone on to compete in the Paralympics and has even won a bronze medal in the men's 200 meters in 2021. He's now training for the upcoming Paris Paralympics, so of course I'm asking him all the behind-the-scenes details of what it's like to be an athlete during the Olympics. All right, friends, this is the inspirational episode you need to get going on those dreams. Here's my conversation with my brother, Jarryd Wallace. Hi, friends. Welcome back to today's episode of the Life with Leverly podcast. I have one of my very oldest friends, my first friend, is in the studio with us, my brother, Jarryd Wallace. Hi, how are you?
What's going on? Glad to be back.
I know. I was thinking back, our last time we recorded was episode 3. So that was a really long time ago.
I love it. I was almost the OG.
I know.
Come on.
Okay, you just had a huge weekend. Can we share the news?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Okay, what happened?
So just getting ready for the Paralympic Games coming up this summer. We're 87 days away from Go Day in Paris.
So
and it feels like we just left Tokyo. It's nuts. But was fortunate enough to be able to break the American record 2 days ago in the long jump. So cool. Jumped 7.89 meters.
Okay.
Which is just under 26 feet, and had a wind illegal jump of 8.06 meters, which makes me the second person ever in the world to jump over 8 meters with a prosthetic leg. Wow. It doesn't count for the records, but it counts for the competition, and it counts for being able to say that I've done it. So it was a good weekend. It was a good weekend.
Wow. Okay, so do we think that you're gonna break 8 by the time the Paralympics roll around?
Oh yeah. We're gonna be breaking 8 at trials, and training's been geared in the right direction. So we finally made, I think, all the adjustments I needed from a prosthetic standpoint. That's one of the variables that's not as much considered, on the adaptive side of sports compared to able-bodied. We've got to really make sure our technology's dialed in. I've spent the last 6 months really working on getting everything exactly where we need it. This past weekend was the fourth time I've ever been on this setup.
Yeah.
So the fact that I was able to get an 8-meter jump out there and still getting used to it is a really good sign for how things are going to bow the rest of the year.
Yeah. I feel like you obviously switched from running to jumping recently, and you've just excelled immediately, which is, I feel like, in the Wallace blood a little bit. But it's been so cool to just see even these last few months, this new training program. And we have a family text, and he sent a text of a jump kind of after this program started. And we were all okay, wait, hold on. You just literally flew through the air. What is happening and what is different? And so this is really where I feel like we're going to see the fruits of your hard work coming out.
I think you just said it right. It's all kind of coming together at the right time. I've always had speed, right? Being a 100, 200 guy, and long jumps, jumping high and running fast, a combination of those two things, right? So, now that we've got the technology dialed in, I'm still able to be really, really fast on the runway, but I'm getting off the blade very different than before. And as you said on that video and picture I sent, it's noticeable, it's different. So
I was oh my gosh, Chris, you have to watch this right now. It is wild. Okay, let's back up a little bit, because I know we have some first time listeners, and I want to give a little recap of your story, and kind of for those of y'all who are listening for the first time and you're maybe not super familiar with the Paralympics, we're going to talk about all of that. So really going back in time, So I'm a year older than Jarryd in school, and you have like always been a runner growing up. I mean, we used to go out running, and you more than me, but like
a little bit.
I feel like in the mornings, my mom would be like, all right, y'all go like run around the neighborhood, like literally run around the neighborhood. And we just thought that was kind of normal.
Yeah.
Running has just always been in our blood. My mom ran track and cross country at Georgia. I think that's kind of like where we both got it. I was a runner for a little while, and we really thought tennis was going to be your sport. And you kind of had this time in high school where you had to pick because you were really good at both of them.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like, where do you want to excel from here? And I think you were like, okay, I can like really be really fast. You were a distance runner when you started. I know that, I guess it was in your senior year, or what, did the pain kind of start in your junior year and you just kind of ran through that pain for a little while?
Yeah, I mean, I would say probably even started in my sophomore year, knowing what I know now.
Yeah.
It was in junior year until like it really slowed me down a lot. And I think that was kind of the time where I realized something was going on.
Yeah.
I had just won 2 state titles, starting to get recruited by colleges around the country to go and have a collegiate career, and was battling a ton with just chronic pain. And so going into my senior year, I kind of was like, hey, let's try to see what we can do. But I want to defend my state titles.
Right.
I want to get some bigger scholarship offers. Like, I really need to be able to train at a high level. And I can't train 2 months, then take 6 weeks off, and that's just not gonna work.
Right.
And so we kind of said, hey, let's get a couple more opinions and see if something a little bit bigger is going on before we, kind of decide what the best step to move forward is. And that was when we found out that I had compartment syndrome. It wasn't the first time that we've heard about compartment syndrome. Mom had it when she was running at the University of Georgia. She was one of the first cases in the state back in the 80s, and had the fasciotomy done, and had great results with it. And so for me, it was like, man, this is an easy decision. It's a 6-week active recovery. Like, let's go get this thing done and go defend those state titles and go get a college scholarship and, live the dream as a collegiate athlete and, go on and try to make the Olympic trials and the Olympic team one day. So, I kind of had my life figured out. I kind of had my, 10-year, 5-year plan locked in, and it was clear as day what was going to happen. And here we go. And so, I remember as a family, we went to Charleston, South Carolina for Thanksgiving, and went on a run together, the last morning before we left. It was like a little, 3 or 4 mile run and through the old town of Charleston, and just hanging out, and got some coffee after, packed up, headed home, and we knew we were going to go to Atlanta the next day and have the surgery done. Looking back now, I didn't realize that was going to be the last normal run I was going to go on with 2 legs, but it was surgery unfortunately didn't go well. I ended up losing about 60% of the muscle from my knee down due to some complications. Spent 2.5 years with having a total of 10 reconstructive surgeries trying to save my leg, and ultimately found myself in a doctor's office, trying to contemplate what's the right step forward. And really it was continue to live the rest of my life in pain and with a deformed limb and low quality of life, or consider having my leg amputated. And, it was probably what should have been the hardest decision a 19-year-old had to make, was really an easy one. And I think that a lot of that had to do with, the 2.5-year journey that I went on. During that 2.5 years, I was angry at God. I was, why me? I, went to hit rock bottom. I, tried to control every circumstance. And then I, began to surrender and say, what, all right, God, this is clearly bigger than me. And I've tried everything and it's not working. So I'm going to trust you. And the peace that I had to be able to sit in a doctor's office and him say, man, I think the best decision for you is to have your leg amputated, for me to say, all right, let's do this thing. Comes from having that, hard experience to that season. And then, that willingness to surrender and kind of trust the Lord for whatever he wanted my life to look like, regardless of, of the decisions. And, it was absolutely a step of faith, but and it's been a pretty crazy journey since.
Well, and it was kind of crazy because the doctor was like, it's not if you amputate, it's when. And I think that put like a different perspective for you to be like, okay, what do I want my life to look like from this point? Like, do I want to run around and play with my kids someday, or do I want to like be forced to sit on like a chair and throw the ball, you know, and it's like you are such an active person. And I just think it was so crazy. Even before you had your leg amputated, you started like doing all this research and you were like, what can I do with an amputated leg? And like literally there's nothing you can't do, you know, it's just reframing your mindset, but you were so okay with that. And I remember I kind of like had a hard time. I was on the way home from college, like visiting, and I had a 4-hour drive. And I remember my like mom called at the beginning of the drive and was like, just so you know, like Jarrod's going to talk to you about this, but like he's decided to like go ahead and amputate his leg. So we're doing all this research and like trying to find like the doctor that will do the surgery and like that'll all the things that came along with like you made the decision. And then it was like, okay, now what? Yeah. And so she was like, I just want you to like think about that. Like he's going to talk to you about it, but he's really excited. So just kind of, you know, that coming into it. And I remember like on the drive home, I was like mad at that you were like forced to make that decision. I was like, this just like isn't fair for this young, healthy guy to like be put in that situation, like everything that went wrong with like the original surgery. I feel like all these like emotions of just, why is this happening to him? Like I was like upset for you, but I needed that, you know, 4 hours to be like, okay, let me get like my initial shock out and like why I'm feeling this. So then I could be like 100% supportive of like, this is going to be great. Like and you were so excited to show me these like pro wakeboarders doing like flips with the amputated leg and their prosthetics on. And you were like, see, like I could do this. So seeing your excitement about having this surgery and like changing your life and kind of having this fresh start, I think gave everybody around you like a confidence of like, okay, he's going to be okay. Like this is a great decision.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I look back now and I'm so grateful for the 2.5 years that I got to go through the trauma and the depression and anger and, you know, all of those surgeries, because when amputation became, you know, one of two options and really the only option at that time, amputation was like a beacon of hope. Right. You know, it was like a second chance versus like, it wasn't a loss for me. Like amputation was not the loss of like a leg. It was like regaining my life. And, you know, I think that there's such a powerful perspective there because, you know, life doesn't always go how we think, right? Like, you know, there are seasons that are a lot more difficult than others. And, you know, there's endurance required in different seasons of life. But, you know, once I was able to get to a point to realize that like, you know, this was for a reason, and I gained experiences or perspectives that I wouldn't have otherwise been able to get. And, you know, now I'm at a point where I'm able to make a really, really hard decision knowing that it is the right decision. Right. Was you know, a huge blessing.
Yeah. So what would you say, how was life like the first year after the surgery of like having your leg amputated? And I guess maybe a little backstory. So we drove to Indiana to have this amputation, and we were there for probably like 7 days or something, and just making sure everything was like healing properly. But it was so wild because we drove up, you know, he had 2 legs, we drove back, he had 1 leg, and he had to let the like the incision and like where they cut your leg off like heal, so you couldn't even wear a prosthetic for the first 6 weeks, right? And so there was like this whole healing process, and just like everybody was just kind of like, okay, like, are you okay? Is this you know, you don't have a leg now. And it was funny because he gets out of surgery and we come into the room, we've been like sitting in the waiting room waiting
for a long time.
Yeah. I mean, the surgery was really long. So we get in there and my mom like sits down on the bed, kind of like where his leg would have been. And she was just kind of like sitting there just to be like, hi, sweetie. You know, I mean, like, I don't know, there was an available spot. And Jarryd immediately was like, ow, ow, my leg, you're sitting on, and she jumps up and he's like laughing. And we were like, okay, he's going to be okay.
He's going to be fine. The nurses were like, what is happening?
I know. We were all like, oh my goodness. And then he was like, I'm just kidding, but phantom pain, I guess, is real. And thing. You've experienced that since. But we were all like, okay. But, so then what would you say like that first year post amputation, like how was that different? What did that look like for you?
Yeah, so doctors gave, basically said 6 weeks is the absolute earliest.
Yeah.
You can wear a leg. So 6 weeks in a day was the first day that I walked with a leg. I tried to get under 6 weeks, but we decided to go a day over just to keep doc happy. But yeah, it was definitely interesting. I think you phrased this earlier, but it was just kind of new normal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of just trying to figure out what life's going to look like. It's not better, not worse. It's just different, and what is my normal now? What is this new normal? And how do I, adapt and kind of get used to, the technology, wearing a socket, took me 3 or 4 minutes to put a leg on at the beginning. Now it takes me 20 seconds, right? So there's just things that, become habit over time. And it was just that learning curve. So, I think that, one of the things that I wasn't prepared for was just how many times my leg shape was going to change over that first year or two. Yeah. And so you had the leg, my muscle mass was there, and the muscle begins to atrophy over time. You're not using it. So if you don't have a foot to, strengthen your calf, then your calf's not going to, the mass isn't going to get there. And so, although all the muscles still work, they're not able to get stronger. And so, there were so many times where I feel like I just was back and forth to the prosthetic company trying to get the leg to fit right and really get to a place where it's super comfortable. And I think that was the only thing that I was really wasn't prepared for, and no one really talked about on the front end of that. I feel like we did as much research as we could to get as much information as we could, but it just it was limited. There's only so much we could find, and so I think that was one thing that I really wasn't fully prepared for. But at the same time, I had been through the ringer for 3 years, and one thing that I knew is I wasn't in any pain anymore, and I was able to move around. And although there was some discomfort and stuff that we were kind of figuring out with the leg, it's just part of that journey. I remember 3 months in getting my first running prosthetic, and beginning to move and run again. And I think that looking back to the decision of making the amputation, the foundation of the decision was just to have a normal quality of life, was to be pain-free. But very quickly, I realized the possibilities that could happen with a prosthetic, and that I would be able to run again, and I would have an opportunity to compete at a very high level, and I would be able to do flips on a wakeboard, and I would be able to hike and do all the things that I loved to do before, right? And so, although the decision to have amputation was not to become a world-class Paralympian, it was to be just a normal dude. The opportunities to set some big goals and dreams were there. And I've never been a guy to shy away from setting some big goals or big dreams.
So true. So then when did the Paralympics come into focus? I mean, I remember it really being before, but when did you realize this could be a reality? And just kind of tell our listeners a little bit about that process.
Yeah. I mean, I think something I've learned over my life about goal setting is, there's a point in which you need to just kind of have some crazy dreams and crazy goals and throw them out there. Do you think that they're fully going to happen? I mean, maybe not, but they need to be there, right? You got to have something. You got to have some true north to kind of run towards and get you moving in the right direction. And then as you go through those experiences and as you begin, putting in the work, those, far goals and dreams start to be oh man, maybe this is something I can actually do. And then you find yourself in a place you're man, I never thought I was going to be here. Well, now I'm starting to think that this is a real thing, and then you start setting really specific goals, in that area. And so I feel like that was kind of my journey, right? Where it was before I had my amputation, I reached out to the Paralympic coach and I said, I'm going to be on the team going to London in 2012. I looked at the world record list and I said, my name's going to be on this list, right? I did probably some crazy things there in that regard, but again, that's just a little bit of who I am and how I was wired. But as that first year went by, at the end of that first year of amputation, I ran in my first race in the 100 meters, and I won the race, and made trials and was able to go and have a chance to make the U.S. team, and was fortunate enough to make the U.S. team and go down to the Pan Am Games, and I was seated 6th in the 100 and ended up running the fastest time in the world in 2011 in the 100 meter dash, winning a gold medal, and kind of saying, hey, I'm here to stay for a while.
Right.
So it was really interesting, I guess, to think about like it wasn't the reason, but I think there was this perspective where when I looked back at like in high school, I feel like running was like my identity. Like you went to high school with me, like people knew me as like the runner, the fast kid, the kid that wore the high black socks, like that was kind of just like my MO, my nature. That's what I was kind of known by. And so like in high school, you kind of hold on to the thing that,
right.
people in school know you by, and that's what you build your kind of your identity around. And losing my identity at a very young age and having to rediscover who I was through the, surgeries and through that healing process, and eventually, surrendering and just trusting the Lord with who I am and what He had planned for me. When I got running back, I saw running not as like rediscovering myself, but it was more of like a gift and something that I truly loved to do, but it never became an idol for me in that sense. And so it was just really cool. I feel like in some sense, like when I get to take off my walking leg and put on my running leg, it's almost like this, this beautiful experience of a reminder of like something that was lost, but now that's something that I cherish even more and are just that much more grateful for.
Yeah. That's awesome. Okay, so how many Olympics have you been to at this point?
Yeah, so I've been to 3. 3 games was in London, Rio, and Tokyo. Getting ready for Paris, hopefully to make it number 4, which would be pretty incredible.
I know. So, okay, tell me like everything about Paris. When are the trials?
Yeah, so we have trials at the end of July. I think it's like the 18th to the 20th. I jump on a Friday morning. I don't know what day the Friday is, but it's Friday morning.
Where are they?
They're in Miramar, Florida. So there's a really nice track right outside of Miami, Fort Lauderdale area, and they have everybody meet there every year, and they just resurfaced it, and
nice.
I'm pumped. It's gonna be fun. Hot weather is always great for me. I love jumping in the warm weather. So it should be a good competition.
And so then after, hopefully you make the team, then the plan will be to go to Paris. And what do you think training will look like in between the trials and the actual games? Yeah,
first thing after trials, we're going to go to the beach with just a week with the wife and kids and just unplug. Mom and dad are going to come down as well. And we're just going to take a week. And for me, it's more just make mental recharge, let the body heal, and reevaluate my goals, get my mind in a good spot. Because when I come home from that trip, it's, we're locked in for 6 weeks. Yeah. And it's go time, right? Everything that we've worked towards for the past 4 years, for the past 15 years, is culminating in this one competition, 6 jumps, and that's it. So, so it's going to be nice to kind of unplug and reset. But then, it's pretty much, we get so specific in everything that we do as far as nutrition, as far as sleep, as far as recovery, external stressors, training stressors, periodization cycles are kind of built out now. We know when I need to do what, and when we need to push the numbers in the track, when we need to push the numbers in the weight room, when we need to start dialing back. So, I've got a really, really great team that's behind me that's been with me for the past couple of years and have a really good picture of what I need going into this games and getting me into a really good headspace. And, at the end of the day, like I love the training. I love learning. I love that process, but, I love competing with a full stadium. Yeah. And that's what I'm excited about. I missed that in Tokyo, obviously with the pandemic, we didn't get to have anybody there. And, Rio was a unique situation. It wasn't as many people as we were hoping. London, there were 85,000 people in the stands, know, and that's, world champs. It's crazy. Yeah. It's crazy. It's unmatched, and, crazy things happen when a lot of people there are getting you hyped up. So I'm ready for it. Totally.
How do you feel like your mindset is kind of, now you have 2 kids. Mm-hmm. That wasn't the case like in previous Olympics, you went from like being single to married to dad. Like, how do you feel like that shift? Because you've got to show up as a father in these next few days. And obviously Leah is taking on some extra responsibility just to support you. Yeah. Truly. She is like
the real MVP.
She really is. I was texting her the other day. It was last week sometime. And I was just like, you are literally a super mom right now. Like, just feel encouraged by that because you're killing it. But how do you kind of feel like you handle all of that?
It's hard. I think that I try to, I try to pull out a playbook out of Dad's book. Growing up, he did such a good job of leaving work at work and home at home. And, I feel like the last 6 months I haven't been able to do a good job of that just because we've been making so many technology changes. So like every time I have a down 5 minutes, I'm analyzing video or I'm, trying to figure out what little adjustment needs to be made in order for the next session to be good. So I'm really excited for the next couple months because all that's done now. And now I can just show up, train, come home, and everything's set in stone. What we're doing, everything's done. So I think that's going to be kind of nice. But I really have been leaning a ton into Leah and just needing her to really help step up with the kids in some capacity because it is hard to spread yourself too thin at times. And I in order to accomplish the things that I want to accomplish, it does take a large portion of me. And again, I'm grateful for that support that I'm given. It is unique because in that, like, there's such a, like, knowing my why and having that foundation so clear, and then knowing that I've got a family of people that support me in that so much.
Right.
Even though there's technically like more external stressors and more demand, it doesn't feel that way because of there's more support. Right. So like, I know that even though it's hard when I'm away for a little while, and I miss the kiddos and, obviously miss being with Leah and getting to, raise their family and do life together for the weeks that I'm gone at a time. I also know that they're just like massively supportive of where I'm at. And, a cool example of this, was super special in the meet on Saturday. My second jump, I jumped the American record, 789. And, there was more there. I knew there was more there, and had the blade kind of acted weird on the third jump. It was like a weird, didn't respond right. The next two I fouled and was just kind of like, man, they were both bombs, like big jumps, but they were just a little too far over the board. And I texted Leah and I was like, hey, final jump. And I said, it's right there. And she goes, honestly, she's like, it's just another jump. And she said that, and I was like, you know what? Like, I'm putting pressure on, like, I got to jump 8. I got to hit this mark. I got to do this. And she just kind of brought it back to her. She's like, just another jump.
Right.
Like, just treat it like another jump. And that was the last thing that went through my mind on the runway before. And, I jumped 806. And so, someone who understands, and she'll be the first to tell you she doesn't really understand me. And when I'm in this mode, sometimes she's like, I don't get, like, it's just, and it's fair. I understand that, I live in a misunderstood world at times, because I do just close off and get so hyper focused and zoned in. But for her to be able to know that and know me so well, just to say, hey, you know what? It's just another jump.
Yeah.
Like, it's just a pit. It's just a runway. You've done it hundreds of times. Stop trying to force it and just let it happen. And I think there's a huge life lesson somewhere in that. I haven't fully digested it, but just the reality of, like, we sometimes put way too much pressure on ourselves to do things that we've put the reps in. Like, it's there. Like, the more we're willing to just show up and be genuine, be our true self, and not try to, force anything to happen, and we just do what we know works and what's right. It's pretty amazing, the end result.
Totally. I know you have 2 sons, obviously, my nephews, Levi and Colton. And Levi is about to be 5 later this year, and he's just like a little wild man. I feel like it's Jarryd 2.0.
Yeah. Facts.
Are there any things that you're taking from mom and dad? Any like parenting lessons, or just like things that you're instilling in him and in Colton as he gets a little bit older that our parents taught us at their age?
Yeah, I think, yes and no. I think that there's so many different things that, life kind of brings, right? And I wanted be the best dad that I can be for them. And at the same time, like, they're so different than who maybe I was or you were in some capacity. Never being a dad, you know, I think one of the things that I've looked back and been like, man, I'm just so impressed at both mom and dad for what they did by themselves. Like, like I've got in-laws and mom and dad all the time, like access, and they were completely alone. Like, mom's parents in Canada, dad's in Oregon. Like, they did this thing alone and they crushed it. And I'm like, I got all the help in the world and I feel like I'm failing 24/7, you know? But I think one of the things that, like, you know, I'm trying to balance is with the boys. And I think part of this is like kind of my personality, is just this like desire for them to like win and succeed really in life, right? Like to feel confident in who they are, to believe, to work hard, to do things right. And then also like realize that he's 4. Right. You know, and it's like, yeah, but like part of the growth process is the failing. Part of the growth process is the like dumping the milk all over the counter without like getting in trouble, right? Because it's like, oh, well, that's just me learning, like, probably can't hold it like that, or that's a little heavier than I thought it would be. And so for me, I feel like, you know, biggest lessons that I'm taking away personally is like, because I'm so like hyper focused or like so like meticulous in everything, I feel like mom and dad did a good job of this, but like I want to be able to give more grace, right? Than I probably do at times, just because of the fact that like, what do I want when I'm going to practice and I'm like not jumping well? You know, do I want coach to be like, you're terrible at your job, or do I want him to like give me a good cue to help me like get out of it, or realize like, hey, it's just, you know, that's just what happens, you know? And how much more do I learn from my mistakes than I actually do from my W's, you know? And so how can I be a great guide for my boys in the midst of like knowing that, hey, like they're gonna mess up a ton, and that's like part of life, and that's great. And you know, obviously give them the same grace and love that Jesus gives me every day too, right? Yeah, I think it's so important to like teach our kids how to fail, you know, or like just like so they can have those attitudes of like, hey, it's going to be okay. Like you said, giving grace. But then in those moments when we're not around and something happens, they know like we can pick it back up from here. This isn't the end of the road for us. Like maybe this didn't go the way that we wanted to, but we can still have a good attitude. We can still like, let's talk about what we did do great here and figure out ways to fix things, instead of just like getting frustrated or mad or like letting anger come out. So I always feel like that was like another kind of important thing to just goes along with giving grace is, you know, teaching them how to do that. 100%. No, I love it. So, okay, you're getting ready to go to the Paralympics, and you've done this before, like we talked about. I personally want to know, and I think some listeners and people want to know just like, what's it really like about like you guys stay in the Olympic Village, like, I mean, you know what people hear on the outside, but what's it really like being in the Olympic Village, doing everything for those 2 weeks that you're there? Because like you're by yourself, like we will all be in Paris, but staying outside. So what's kind of like that insider experience like? Yeah, I mean, it's definitely unique, you know, college 2.0 in some capacity, right? I mean, you're kind of bunked up in a dorm room, for lack of a better term. Most of the time you'll have a roommate in the same room as you. You share a bathroom. It's so wild. Yeah, it's unique. The beds aren't always the most comfortable, you know, like it's definitely you know, it's definitely different from an environment standpoint. The food is, you know, hit or miss. They're, you know, I feel like we're going to be in France. The food's probably going to be pretty good. Yeah. I think that's one of the things that they're going to try to kind of really highlight in the Village for the Athlete experience. But, you know, I think one thing that people don't really think about a ton, and I experienced in my first games, was how big the Olympic Village is and how spread out everything is. And I ended up like, for my European friends, they're going to laugh at this, but I ended up walking like 3 or 4 miles a day extra than I typically do. Like I've training partners that, from Europe, and they're just like, dude, you drive everywhere. And I'm like, well, I can't really like walk anywhere, like the way that it's set up, like we don't live in the city, bro.
To get...
Yeah, I can walk in the neighborhood, but that's about it. You know what I'm saying? So, it's a little different. So I've, starting like right now, I start doing like a 1 mile or 2 mile walk a day, on top of my training, to get my body used to the extra mileage and volume that I have to put on when I'm there. So, you walk to the dining hall and back 6 times, 6 different routes, and it's a half mile probably each. And then if you go to training, you got to walk probably a half a mile to the bus, and they drop you off, and you probably walk another half mile to a mile to the track. So it really adds up through the time that you're there. And so that's just one thing that's kind of like, people don't really think about, that is like an additive. As far as like just the village itself, it's a really cool experience. I mean, you're there with people from all over the world. Some people because you've been competing with for a long time. Some people you don't. Obviously, there's just crazy language barriers that exist because there's 170 countries that are there, and for the most part, like English is home base for everybody. But like, it's not very common like to have crazy in-depth conversations with people, because you're just battling that language barrier. So sport is a universal language, and you say hi and you kind of do what you can. We are you all eat in this huge dining hall together, and it's kind of overwhelming how massive it is, really. But it's a really, really neat experience. Once, or for me, hopefully four times in a lifetime experience.
Yeah. Do you know what they do with Olympic villages, like after? Like, what will this become after the Olympics and Paralympics are over?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we just had some of my buddies back in Tokyo, and they went and looked where the village was. And every city has kind of a different plan, but for the most part, it becomes housing for the community in some capacity, or they find some way to kind of reuse the facilities. So the village itself becomes housing, and then sometimes they'll turn the space around, which was just like roadways for trucks and stuff to come in for the food, or little activity centers. They'll turn that into like a park, and so it ends up in Tokyo they did a beautiful job obviously with it, and they're just pride in their land and their city. They turned it into apartments for the community, and then a beautiful huge park in Chiba right outside of Tokyo. So that's kind of typically the plan. It doesn't always go that way. Same thing with the big venues. They try to recycle and reuse them in some capacity. I know that in LA, the US is basically they're not building any brand new facilities. They're keeping basically making the existing facilities a little bit nicer, whatever. So there's different sustainability plans for each region, and that's one of the draws in proposing to host the games is to kind of elevate the city in some capacity and bring some sustainability and hopefully long-term sustainability to that area. So,
yeah, that's cool. Yeah. Okay, so back in 2021, when you were first on the podcast, you touched about wanting to start your own business. Any progress on that?
Yeah, well, a lot of progress, a lot of failures. Going back to that, right? I mean, and I guess I would say failures and just like a lot of lessons learned going through the journey. So still working very hard. Rival is kind of the brand that we're building. RIVL, it stands for Restore Mobility, Innovate Technology, Value People, and Learn Continuously. Kind of who we are as a business is kind of intertwined in our name. But the big goal is to kind of address what I think are like the two largest problems in the adaptive community. The first one being technological, and the second one being just access to information and education, something that we got to experience pretty in depth early on, and kind of addressed on that earlier. And just from the technology side of things, there's a lot of advancements that are being made, that just the application of it is still just kind of behind, if you will. So, just been really leaning into how to find the best way to serve the community and take the experiences that I've had through my career and the platform that I've built to be able to create opportunities to give people the information they need and the resources they need to win on their own journey, right? Yeah. So I'm not trying to turn everybody into a Paralympic world record holder, right? That's not everybody's dream, but for the people that want to just walk pain-free or go run a 5K or play with the kids in the yard, like, really want to continue to limit the barriers it takes to achieve those things. So we've kind of, we're leaning really heavily on the for-profit side of the business. Last time we were talking, we've kind of shifted our focus a little bit more towards the nonprofit side of the business right now, and have a foundation called Rival Foundation that's built to really become the most reliable and trusted source of information for this community. Hopefully we'll be launching in January this coming year. We're building out our kind of portfolio of content, for lack of a better term, right now, but our focus is basically to develop digital education for this community, so that any questions they might have, anything they want to learn about the community, anything they want to learn about the technology, anything they want to learn about their doctors, their prosthetists, or rehabilitation, or training, or learning how to walk again, or physical therapy. I mean, mental health. Encouraging stories that they can learn in the community. Like literally everything across the board, we're going to compile and create a really personalized digital experience for every person who interacts with our website and with our brand. So that's kind of our main focus right now, is to get this information out into the community to solve one of the biggest needs for this community, and meet the people where they are. After we begin touching them from that standpoint, of course, research and education's going to kind of come together, and hopefully we'll be able to drive some innovation and put forth some world recognized rehabilitative protocols and things of that nature. But right now we're just going to focus on making sure we give the community what they need immediately.
That's awesome. And we'll keep you guys posted when all that information goes live, hopefully in January.
Yeah.
Okay, what advice would you give someone either going through a similar experience as yours, or one that is dismantling their identity and they're feeling lost?
I think the first thing is just adversity is relative, right? So my story is my story. I don't expect everyone to handle the loss the same exact way I did. My path and blueprint that worked for me was specific to me. I hope that there may be some lessons that can be pulled out or learned, or perspectives that may encourage or challenge, but I definitely didn't do it perfectly. And everyone kind of has their own journey towards recovery. I think that, one of the things that I learned is just the power of the mindset, and the power of having a good attitude, and the power of just holding on to a dream or holding on to a goal. And to be fair, like during, I'd say like 18 months of that 2.5, 3 year period, I probably lost my ability to dream, or allowed myself to get to a place of darkness, of just pain and fear and anger, so much so that I was letting the reality of my present circumstances stop me from like looking ahead,
right,
and stopping me from looking forward. And so the more that you can just, if you're in the middle of something right now, the more that you can just step out and maybe say, okay, I know I'm going through this right now, but if my best friend was going through this, what would I tell them? Why don't I encourage myself like I would encourage my best friend? Sometimes we're our own worst enemies, and we kind of put ourselves in the dirt, and where if it was happening to anybody else that we cared about or loved, we would be there championing them like crazy. So champion yourself like you would champion your best friend. Give yourself grace like you would give your best friend grace, right? Love yourself well like you would love your best friend. Serve yourself like you would serve your friend. I think that would be the best piece of advice I would kind of give someone currently going through this. And then on the back end of that, I'd say, you're stronger than you think. We don't really know what we're capable of until we're put in situations where we have to step up and level up in some capacity. Good, bad, or indifferent, right? That works across the board. Doesn't, whether you're in a good situation or a bad situation, until you put yourself in where you get stretched,
right.
You don't really realize what you're capable of. So, you will be okay. You will get through it. And it's okay to not be okay.
Yeah.
You can have bad days. Just don't stay there.
Okay, so wrapping today's podcast up, I always ask my guests, what is the most meaningful act of kindness someone has extended to you that has had a lasting impact on your life?
All right. The That's a tough question. I guess I just to somewhat keep it on brand with the conversation for today. Prosthetic technology is really expensive.
Yeah.
Really expensive.
I don't think people even like know. I mean, give us like getting a new leg is like.
Yeah, I mean the leg that I'm wearing right now is billed at $25,000.
It's crazy.
Yeah. So, depending on your insurance, depending on what gets approved or denied, I mean there's a lot of variables that come into play, but the running technology is probably around $15,000 to $18,000, and it's not covered,
right? Because
it's not medically necessary per the terminology that the insurance uses, and so, man, I think if I just look back, and I've had multiple prosthetic companies and multiple process that I've worked with over the years that have been so generous and gracious in giving me this technology, in making the cost negligible, and really allowing me to run after my dream. No pun intended. Stephen Schulte and Ryan Doherty, and it's been really, really humbling over the years to just really realize the willingness of people that are running a business and trying to make a living and provide for the family, and have felt like, hey, we want to support you and we believe in you so much. So I wouldn't be where I am today, like, and have had the opportunities I've had without the time spent by these guys to really make sure that I have everything that I need to accomplish things I've accomplished. So yeah, I think that would be for sure.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, well, tell us where everybody can find you. I know that a lot of people are going to be following along through the trials.
Yeah.
You have been doing a really great job of like posting videos on your Instagram just so people can even like kind of see where you're going. And like, I just like now is a great time to start following along with Jarryd, because you will definitely start seeing even more progress. I think go start watching his videos, and then in a few months, you're going to be like, wow, when I first started, he was here and now he's jumping over 8 feet. So we're going to put that into existence.
8 meters, hopefully. 8 feet's a pretty small jump.
8 meters.
You should be able to jump 8 feet.
True. What do I know? Okay, so where can everybody find you?
Yeah, I mean, Instagram's pretty much the place where I spend most of my time. What little time that I have, margin time, goes towards Instagram. So yeah, it's Wallace_Jarryd, JARRYD. And yeah, so you can find me there, and definitely stay tuned. I'm kind of balance between posting these videos because I want to let the people know that I'm having a blast and they can get a little glimpse into what's going on, but I'm trying to keep my competitors wondering what's going on over there. I don't want to let them know I'm dropping bombs yet. But they've been put on notice now, so it's going to be a fun here through Paris, getting ready to go.
Well, I know I probably don't tell you this enough, but I'm so proud of you, just watching you over the last 14 years, even longer than that, just as your running career started when we were in high school, just seeing everything that you've accomplished, everything you've gone through to get to where you are today. I mean, it is not easy. You've had your fair share of adversity and times where you really thought like, this is it for me. I'm not picking it up. I'm not moving forward. And so just everything you've overcome to get to where you are today, I'm just beyond proud to be your sister. And just, you always know I'm supporting you from the sidelines. And I'm really excited to see where Rival goes. And after the Paralympics, kind of like, what happens next? I feel like there will be another podcast with Jarryd in the future telling us all about like where Rival is, because I think there's some really big things coming that you haven't even been able to scratch the surface on just because of training and where you are in preparation for the Paralympics. So I'm really excited to see just what you do next. And I just always want you to know that I'm so proud of everything you've accomplished.
Well, I appreciate it. Love you a bunch.
I love you. Thank you for coming on the podcast. And listeners, we will keep you guys posted on how he is doing in Paris. Our families will be there. We'll be doing some behind the scenes stuff. So make sure you follow along. I know this episode's going to be airing as we get a little bit closer to the Paralympics going live, but I'm so excited for y'all to see a little behind the scenes. And now maybe you've got some skin in the game. You know somebody who's going to be there. So we would love your support as we cheer Jarryd on. But thank you so much for listening, and until next time.